Shinzo Abe, 2022. A country known for peace, a leader gunned down in broad daylight, and behind it all, a homemade weapon built in secret. Japan didn't see it coming. No one did. Shinzo Abe, the country's most powerful post war leader, collapses mid speech, blood on his shirt, chaos in the air. The assassin? Tetsuya Yamagami, a quiet, unemployed man with one mission: punish Abe for his alleged ties to a cult like church that bankrupted his family. The weapon? Not a black market Glock. It was hand built, two metal pipes taped to a plank of wood. And it worked. Abe's security team? Frozen. Useless. The second shot hits. Abe's legacy ends, right there on the street. And then comes the twist. The Unification Church admits they did have ties to Abe's political faction. Now Japan's asking, was this terrorism or revenge? He wasn't shot by an extremist. He was executed by a man who believed he was saving others from a system. A bullet didn't shake Japan. A $700 homemade gun did. Muammar Gaddafi, 2011. He ruled with gold-plated fists, swept in tents next to palaces, and called himself King of Kings. His final moment? A sewer. For 4 decades, Muammar Gaddafi was Libya. He crushed dissent, funded terror abroad, and once had the gall to pitch his tent on Donald Trump's lawn. But in 2011, the Arab Spring came for him. Rebels hunted him down like a wild animal. He fled, caught, and the world watched in horror and glee as his bloodied body was paraded on camera. What really happened? NATO strikes disabled his convoy. Then, rebels found him hiding in a drainage pipe like a rat. He begged for mercy. Instead, they beat him, sodomized him with a bayonet, and shot him in the head. The video leaked before his body turned cold. Washington claimed victory. Clinton laughed on camera. But Libya? It never recovered. Warlords now carve up cities Gaddafi once ruled from his golden throne. He built his empire with oil, money, and fear, and died in the gutter crying, "Don't shoot." Benazir Bhutto, 2007. She returned from exile with fire in her eyes, but in Pakistan, reform comes with a price, paid in blood and silence. Benazir Bhutto wasn't just a politician, she was a symbol. The first woman to lead a Muslim-majority country, twice ousted, twice hunted. And in 2007, she dared to come back. She promised to fight terrorism, clean up corruption, but within weeks, she was gone. It happened at a rally in Rawalpindi, just like her father, who was hanged there in '79. First, gunshots, then a suicide blast. Her body was found slumped inside her armored vehicle, her skull cracked. The killer? Officially a lone Taliban assassin. Unofficially, fingers pointed everywhere, from the deep state to rival politicians. No autopsy, no real investigation. Her family even claimed the government cleaned the crime scene with high-pressure hoses. Pakistan lost its brightest hope for democratic reform, and the power vacuum? It opened the door for more chaos, more extremism. She warned them she'd be killed. They killed her anyway. Yitzhak Rabin, 1995. He tried to make peace and was murdered by the very people he served. Not everyone wants peace. Some want blood for compromise. Yitzhak Rabin was no idealist. He was a war hero. He commanded Israeli forces in '67, but in '93 he shocked the world by shaking hands with Yasser Arafat, his former enemy. The Oslo Accords split the country. Right-wing extremists saw it as betrayal. They didn't want compromise. They wanted conquest. On November 4th, 1995, at a peace rally in Tel Aviv, Rabin stepped off stage. A 25-year-old Israeli law student pulled the trigger 3 times. Rabin died with the lyrics to a peace song still in his pocket. The assassin, Yigal Amir, said God told him to act. He wasn't a terrorist from afar. He was one of Rabin's own, a patriot, a killer. Rabin's death didn't just stall the peace process, it shattered it. The Middle East was never the same. He didn't die in battle. He died trying to stop the next one. Olof Palme, 1986. He walked home without bodyguards. Within seconds, Sweden's innocence vanished. And the murder? Still unsolved. Still whispered about. Olof Palme wasn't a typical prime minister. He criticized US wars, apartheid, and even Soviet aggression, publicly and fearlessly. He made enemies on all sides. On February 28, 1986, after watching a movie with his wife, he was gunned down in the middle of Stockholm. No guards, no warning. A single bullet to the back. His wife watched him collapse. The country froze. Sweden, of all places, neutral and safe, now had a political murder it couldn't explain. The investigation spiraled. Over 130 suspects, dozens of theories, the CIA, Kurdish separatists, arms dealers, but no conviction. Until 2020, officials blamed a dead man with no trial. To this day, many people believe the truth was buried with Palm. In the heart of a peaceful democracy, someone pulled the trigger, and no one's paid for it. Indira Gandhi, 1984. She sent tanks into a holy shrine. Months later, her own bodyguards turned their rifles on her. India still bleeds from that day. Indira Gandhi was power personified. India's first and only female prime minister. In 1984, she ordered Operation Blue Star, storming the Golden Temple to flush out Sikh militants. The operation left the temple scarred and over 400 people dead. Sikh communities across India erupted in grief and anger. Gandhi knew what might follow, but she kept her Sikh bodyguards, perhaps as a message of unity. On October 31st, they fired 33 bullets into her chest and abdomen. The nation shattered. Anti-Sikh riots exploded within hours. Trains full of corpses, homes burned, thousands murdered, some in broad daylight. Leaders watched, police stood still. Many called it a pogrom, not a riot. And no, justice never truly arrived. She died in defiance, but her death ignited a genocide India still refuses to fully confront. Salvador Allende, 1973. He gave Chile democracy and died with an AK-47 in his hands as fighter jets bombed his palace. But did he really take his own life? Salvador Allende made history as the world's first democratically elected Marxist president. But his leftist reforms, nationalizing industries, challenging US interests, made powerful enemies fast. On September 11, 1973, tanks rolled in. Fighter jets screamed overhead. The CIA had backed a coup led by General Pinochet. The palace was under siege. Allende, refusing to surrender, gave a final radio address. Then, silence. He was found dead inside La Moneda, a gunshot wound to the head. The official story, suicide. But his supporters call it murder. His weapon of choice? A gift from Fidel Castro, an AK-47 with "To my good friend" engraved on the stock. Pinochet's regime went on to torture and kill thousands. The US shrugged. Whether he died by his hands or others, Allende's fall ended democracy in Chile for 17 years. Robert F. Kennedy, 1968. He won California, and 5 minutes later was bleeding on a kitchen floor. But the evidence doesn't add up. Robert F. Kennedy was the comeback kid. A grieving nation still healing from JFK's murder had found new hope. He spoke truth to power, promised peace in Vietnam, and on June 5, 1968, after a triumphant primary win in LA, he waved to supporters, then turned into a hotel pantry. Sirhan stepped forward and fired. Kennedy dropped. 5 others were hit. But here's the twist. Forensic reports suggest more bullets than Sirhan's gun could hold. Multiple witnesses claimed shots came from behind. Sirhan was always in front. RFK died the next day. His son, RFK Jr., doesn't believe Sirhan acted alone. Neither do many experts. 2 brothers, 2 assassinations, 5 years apart, and still, America has no closure. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968. He changed the world with words, so they silenced him with a rifle. But the truth behind his death? Still buried in the shadows. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't just marching for civil rights. In 1968, he was challenging war, capitalism, and the American system itself. That made him dangerous. On April 4th, in Memphis, he stepped out onto his motel balcony. A single shot tore through his jaw. He was dead within the hour. James Earl Ray, a drifter, confessed, then recanted. Years later, a civil trial declared King's death was the result of a conspiracy involving government agencies. But most people never heard about it, because the media barely covered the verdict. King's own family didn't believe Ray acted alone. Even Coretta Scott King said the real killers were not the man who pulled the trigger. They killed the dreamer, but 50 years later, the system he died fighting still hasn't faced the truth. Malcolm X, 1965. He found his voice, changed his message, and days later was gunned down in front of his children. But who really wanted him dead? Malcolm X was a thunderstorm. Once a fiery minister for the Nation of Islam, he later broke ranks, calling out corruption within the movement. He began speaking about unity, human rights, and real revolution. On February 21, 1965, As he stood before a packed ballroom in New York, gunmen rushed the stage. He was shot 21 times. His daughters sat in the front row. 3 men were convicted, but decades later, 2 were exonerated after it was revealed the FBI and NYPD withheld key evidence. Some believe government agencies let the murder happen, or worse, orchestrated it. One thing's clear: Malcolm wasn't killed for what he was killed for what he was becoming. His words still echo. His killers never fully unmasked. John F. Kennedy, 1963. A smiling president, a convertible ride through Dallas. Then, 3 shots, 1 dead icon, and a million questions no one could ever answer. November 22nd, 1963. JFK was waving to cheering crowds when the gunfire erupted. The Zapruder film captured everything, his head snapping violently as the fatal shot hit. Lee Harvey Oswald was blamed, but here's where the mystery spirals. Eyewitnesses claimed shots came from multiple directions. A magic bullet theory emerged, trying to explain impossible ballistics. And then Oswald was killed, on live television, by nightclub owner Jack Ruby before he could testify. The Warren Commission said Oswald acted alone, but decades later, 70% of Americans still believe there was a conspiracy. CIA, Mafia, LBJ, theories never stopped. Even JFK's brain went missing during the autopsy. 1 president, 3 shots, endless secrets, and maybe the truth is buried in Arlington with him. Mahatma Gandhi, 1948. He freed a nation without firing a shot, but in the end, it was a fanatic's bullet that ended his revolution of peace. Mahatma Gandhi brought down the British Empire with salt marches, hunger strikes, and nonviolent resistance. But after India's independence, tensions rose fast, especially between Hindus and Muslims. Gandhi called for unity. He even fasted until violence stopped. To Hindu extremists, that made him a traitor. On January 30th, 1948, during his evening prayer, Nathuram Godse stepped forward and fired 3 shots at point-blank range. Gandhi folded his hands in prayer as he fell, whispering "Hey Ram." Godse believed Gandhi was surrendering India to Pakistan and betraying Hindus. He was tried and hanged, but his ideology didn't die with him. India mourned, but then came the riots. Mass killings, retaliations, Gandhi's dream of unity dissolved into bloodshed. He lived without violence, and died because others refused to. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, 1914. A wrong turn, a teenage assassin, and a shot that didn't just kill a man, it dragged the entire planet into war. June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary rides through Sarajevo in an open car. Earlier that day, another assassin tried and failed, but hours later, the driver took a wrong turn, right into the path of 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip. 2 bullets, one hits his wife, the other, the Archduke. Within weeks, Europe spiraled into chaos. Alliances activated like dominoes. Austria declared war on Serbia, then Russia, then Germany, France, and Britain joined in. World War I had begun. 20 million died. 4 empires fell. Princip captured alive. Too young to be executed by law, so he rotted in prison, losing an arm, coughing up blood until he died at 23. It wasn't a warlord or a president, just a teenager with a pistol and a dream of revolution. Abraham Lincoln, 1865. The war was over. The Union was saved. Then, inside a theater booth, a Southern actor pulled the trigger and rewrote American history again. April 14th, 1865. Just 5 days after Robert E. Lee's surrender, Lincoln attends a play at Ford's Theater. Behind him creeps John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor turned Confederate fanatic. He shoots Lincoln in the head, jumps to the stage, and shouts, "Sic temper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. Booth escapes. A 12-day manhunt follows through swamps and barns before Union soldiers corner and kill him, but the damage is done. Lincoln dies the next morning. His assassination doesn't just rob the nation of a leader, it derails Reconstruction. His successor, Andrew Johnson, lacked vision and moral clarity, allowing the South to reimpose white supremacy for generations. Lincoln freed the slaves. Booth tried to resurrect the old world with 1 bullet, and in many ways, America still hasn't recovered. Julius Caesar, 44 BCE. He expanded Rome, crushed his enemies, and was loved by the people. So why did his closest friends stab him 23 times in broad daylight? March 15th, 44 BCE, the Ides of March. Julius Caesar walks into the Roman Senate believing he's unstoppable. He's just been declared dictator for life. Some hail him as a survivor, but others, they see a tyrant. A group of senators, including his closest ally Brutus, form a circle. Then come the knives. One after another, they plunge steel into his body. He falls beneath the statue of Pompey, the guy he once defeated. And as legend tells it, his final words were, "Et tu, Brutus?" Rome weeps. The conspirators believe they've saved the Republic, but they miscalculated. Caesar's death sparks civil war. His grandnephew Octavian becomes Augustus, Rome's first emperor. They tried to kill tyranny. Instead, they murdered the Republic. Which one shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you're hungry for more stories they never teach in school, subscribe. See you in the next one.